Welcome to week 6. I think we're making tremendous progress and just can't believe the great comments and insights that everyone is making. As we go into week 6, some questions are being asked about misconduct. Why do companies get involved in misconduct and then repeatedly get into trouble and mistakes? And usually most misconduct is of a minor nature, things that are easy to correct. Although in some cases, when we're looking at Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, illegal activities, those things can be pretty devastating. But almost every company has to weekly deal with situations where employees make mistakes. Sometimes these relate to interfaces with stakeholders that cause a lot of problems. And more specifically this week, you took a look at the Corvette ad. And I think I'm going to ask Linda to talk a little bit about maybe using the Corvette ad in class, or is it a good example of a company that maybe didn't even see the ethical issue? Maybe they were so focused on trying to do good advertising they didn't understand it would cause a problem.
I think that's absolutely correct. I think the Corvette ad is an example of General Motors having what they thought was an excellent marketing tactic and a way to make the Corvette a more aspirational vehicle for younger buyers, as the average age of Corvette buyers was somewhere around 55 and up when this ad aired. So the whole idea was they put a lot of money into this campaign. They brought in Guy Ritchie, who's a noted producer, Madonna's ex-husband, the Rolling Stones singing Jumpin' Jack Flash. The ad is called A Boy's Dream, and the whole idea was that this young boy just fantasized about what it'd be like to drive a Corvette. But in so doing, it looked more like a video game. So it looked very unreal, and let's face it, one of the number one risks for new drivers is that they drive very irresponsibly, have their friends in the car, and they end up being involved in some devastating accidents. So for General Motors to air this ad for 2 weeks and have to listen to the parents groups coming to them and complaining that their children were watching this ad, excited about this ad, and it didn't give them any more respect of the care and diligence that they needed to take in driving, General Motors did the right thing and pulled the ad. But General Motors should have tested that ad against a variety of audiences besides the target audience to find out that there was a spillover viewer group that was an inappropriate audience for that ad. Once they realized that, they pulled the ad. Very expensive mistake on their part. They had other ads that related to this ad in the can as part of a longer-term campaign to make the Corvette a more aspirational vehicle to younger target market. So even a good company like General Motors ultimately does the right things, but should not have been involved in a situation where they had this 2 weeks of looming criticism from parents groups and others who were very concerned about the airing of the ad.
Linda, I think that's a good example of situations that many companies go through. And if you think about this, you can't have ethical decision making unless you recognize there's an ethical issue. And this comes back to our ethical decision-making model. There's an intensity. The ethical intensity of the issue has to rise to a level that people recognize it. And it's often assumed that people go through some type of moral decision-making model in their own mind, but this doesn't happen in complex business situations where people they're so focused on the business focus, they don't see the things behind the scene that could cause problems.
And I think the same thing is true. You look at the small type at the beginning of the ad. They say basically this is fabricated, this is not real. It's a little bit like the one of the truck ads several years ago that showed a truck pulling an airplane, had small type saying that this is not realistic, this truck is not pulling this airplane. But once again, that's in mouse print. What matters is the overall conveyance of the message in the ad, not what the legal department is said to put in there to create a disclaimer so that you have no legal liability.
So I think this gets across the idea that we will never develop an organization that does not get involved in misconduct occasionally. And the misconduct is often defined by stakeholders, and those stakeholders often put a lot of pressure on the company and hold them accountable, and unfortunately often assume that they did this intentionally, when very often it's just maybe they didn't have enough knowledge about the area they were working in, Or let's take advertising, for example. Very often it's outsourced to people that don't really work in the business world every day, right?
Well, quite often the creative department
Mhm.
is not grounded in the business world. So the creative department will take ideas that they think are funny or catchy and use them in campaigns, and then it's up to the account services department and others to make sure that that matches the client's target markets and business needs for that particular client.
Okay, this has been great to visit with you a little bit this week. And we'll be back next week in week 7. We're moving on very quickly. We can't believe it's going by so fast. So see you soon.